session, which has been scheduled today, Tuesday, March 26, 2024, for the purpose of discussing school board policy JICK threats, school board policy IKA grading systems, and the OCPS teacher pipeline. The public will not have an opportunity to participate in this work session to provide public comment because this is not a regularly scheduled board meeting. No action will be taken, and there will be no open public comment period in which the public normally addresses the school board on relevant topics that are related to the work of the board. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. I thought it was still morning. Board members are attending in person. Chair Teresa Jacobs and Vice Chair Angie Gallo will be participating via phone. Are they on the phone now? Do we know? Chair is not. Is Member Gallo on the phone? Okay, we'll check in later. Dr. Castor Karen Dental could not be with us this afternoon. I want to remind the public that the board members will not be engaging in outside electronic or digital communication during this meeting so that we can focus on the meeting itself, giving our attention to the matters immediately before us. Should you want to contact us, please continue to do so before or after each meeting. To my fellow board members and district staff, when speaking, please make sure that your microphone is turned on and that you speak directly into it so that our YouTube and Orange TV viewers can hear you clearly. We're going to start with a moment of silence and then the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Vasquez to introduce our OCPS teacher pipeline presentation.
Thank you. We have been working very diligently to address the teacher shortage that the nation is dealing with. It's not something that is just germane to Orange County Public Schools or Florida. We are thankful that the state has opened up opportunities for us to expand both our recruitment efforts and hopefully our retention efforts. And you will hear about those pathways today. And I'm going to turn it over to Rob Bixler to start the presentation.
Good afternoon, board members and Dr. Vasquez. Today we are going to share the various OCPS instructional recruiting pathways within OCPS. Florida is currently grappling with the most severe shortage of teachers and staff in its history. Vacancies in the nation have doubled over the past 2 years, and it's estimated more than 100,000 students do not have a full-time teacher in the classroom. There were over 5,000 teacher vacancies in Florida in January of 2023. National enrollment data from the National Council on Teacher Quality in 2012 shows just over 880,000 candidates entered a teacher prep program, and more recently, in 2022, just under 600,000 candidates entered a teacher prep program. Locally, this decline has impacted our ability to hire college of ed graduates to fill our vacancies. In 2010 and 2011, UCF reported 632 degrees were awarded to education majors in both elementary and secondary areas. And in 21-22, the number of graduates decreased to 373. In the spring of last year, that number increased slightly. While troubling, the teacher shortage presents an opportunity to fundamentally rethink and improve teacher preparation, pathways, and recruiting of instructional staff.
Recruiting instructional talent and providing our schools with qualified teachers is the primary focus for the Talent Acquisition and HR Programs Department in Human Resources. On this graph, you will see an overview of the instructional recruiting pathways that includes our current, in blue, and new, in orange, recruiting initiatives, pathways, and partnerships. During the presentation, I will provide you with general details and information for each of the pathways listed beneath each category. Traditional pathway changes. To increase enrollment in traditional teacher prep programs, higher ed institutions are actively seeking new opportunities with school districts. Currently, OCPS partners with over 50 colleges and universities. Many of our partners have transitioned to include both in-person, virtual, and self-paced options for course delivery. Additionally, several provide pathways designed to support paraprofessionals, program assistants, and other staff who are aspiring to be a teacher. Exciting news, in September 2023, the Florida Department of Education released the Temporary Teacher Internship Certificate, which provided senior interns who are currently enrolled in a state-approved teacher prep program and have not received a bachelor's degree the opportunity to be hired early and paid under Florida Statute 1012.56. OCPS is currently piloting this with 10 seniors this semester, expecting 50 or more in fall of 2024. The Professional Studies or Lifelong Learning track allows for students to change their major to graduate if barriers such as passing state exams, in-person internships are not possible, or they have a minor in education. With this degree, the teacher candidate will qualify to apply for a temporary teaching certificate upon passing of the subject area exam only, allowing the teacher candidate 1 to 5 years to finish other testing and any requirements listed on their temporary or statement of eligibility. Alternative certification pathways. Teacher candidates that have a bachelor's degree in any area and who pass a subject area exam are eligible to teach in Florida. Once hired, a temporary teaching certificate is issued by the state. All teachers on a temporary certificate must work with a mentor, complete a series of courses, professional competencies, and pass all other state exams, which would be the GKT and professional ed test, within a set time frame of their certificate. This is usually 3 to 5 years. OCPS teachers are fortunate as we have our own alternate certification pathway through the Professional Learning Department. The Professional Learning Certification Program, known as PLCP, this pathway is for classroom-based teachers within OCPS, and it is taught on Canvas via 4 interactive modules by OCPS expert teachers as the facilitators. PLCP provides wraparound supports not only with content and competency completion, but with positive feedback and encouragement. The goal of the PLCP is to expand the pool of certified educators who make a positive impact on student achievement and provides a quality educational certification pathway. External alternative certification pathways are provided by educational preparatory institutes, known as EPIs, whose coursework and instruction are in mixed modalities. Current teachers with a statement of eligibility can enroll, as well as candidates who are transitioning into education prior to hire, who complete a field experience component in the classroom, which is similar to an internship if not currently teaching. Many EPIs are found in state colleges such as Valencia, Seminole, and Polk, but can also be completed through private programs such as Teachers of Tomorrow. For current OCPS teachers, Title II funding can reimburse most of the costs associated with these alternative certification pathways. Para-to-teacher pathways. Currently, OCPS has 2 very successful Grow Your Own teacher pipeline opportunities for paraprofessionals and program assistants. These programs are with Rollins College and the University of Central Florida and provide coursework, support, and degree advancement for current employees with scholarships, reduced or no-cost tuition options. Our Rollins College Pathway to Teaching program provides an opportunity for employees to earn a bachelor's in elementary ed or a master's in education, utilizing 3 courses per semester 7 semesters total for 2.5 years continuous track. Courses are hybrid, 1 day per week, in person, 1 day online, in a live virtual setting. Junior internship is 5 weeks, half a day at an alternate location where OCPS provides substitute coverage for the paraprofessional vacancy. Senior internship can occur at the employee's current work location. Monthly information sessions are virtual and/or in person for continuous recruiting exposure. To date, 42 OCPS paraprofessionals or program assistants have graduated from Rollins and are teaching. Our UCF Elementary Educational Pathways Program, E2P2, provides the opportunity for employees to earn a bachelor's in elementary education. Employees must have a paraprofessional or program assistant experience to apply for this pathway. Coursework for this program consists of 2 to 3 courses per semester based on time of year, 8 semesters total, and can be taken fully on live, virtual, in person, or combination of modalities. For this pathway, because the employee has experience, the junior internship is waived, along with 2 prerequisites. Senior internship can occur at the school location of employment. OCPS has provided 30 scholarship opportunities for candidates choosing this pathway. From August through March, monthly virtual orientation sessions are provided. March through July, specialized support from UCF and the team regarding enrollment and prerequisites is individualized. Scholarship applications can be submitted during the month of April. To date, 2 OCPS paraprofessionals or program assistants have graduated from UCF, with another 10 expected in May of 2026. And if the paraprofessional is either in a pathway and works at a Title I school, technology and books are provided at no cost. Registered apprenticeships. Earlier this year, the state of Florida released information on the Florida Registered Teacher Apprentice Pathway, TAP. All current approved colleges of education in the state of Florida were given an opportunity to submit a pre-application that included their plan, if interested, in supporting this new apprentice pathway. In December, the Florida Department of Education approved several applications and announced the related technical institutes, RTI, that are included on this slide. OCPS is currently collaborating to develop an apprentice program, both pathway with Rollins College and Daytona State, with hopes for future expansion. We are awaiting next steps from the Florida Department of Education, which include approving partnering components and a packet to submit district intent to register as a partnering employer. District applications can begin being submitted after March 21st. Associate Teacher Substitute. OCPS has partnered with Bloomboard Incorporated to develop an on-the-job teacher training program pilot for classified paraprofessionals and/or program assistants currently in our schools with experience. This pathway will pilot and begin in August of 2024 at no cost to the employee, and will enable select candidates to graduate with a bachelor's degree in elementary education from Lake Erie College. Bloomboard is a talent development provider that enables K-12 school districts to grow, advance, and retain educators by making professional education a benefit of employment. Bloomboard offers turnkey programs for school districts to move educators forward and connects districts to higher ed institutions that offer certification and degree programs. Bloomboard's Educator Advancement Program requires learners to be active participants in a combination of online and synchronous learning processes provided by higher ed partners in partnership with Bloomboard team. Each course within a program includes 3 portfolio-based unit assessments. The learning activities build upon key concepts with research, case studies, and other examples. Synchronous learning events provided by the university partner will include, but are not limited to, collaborative discussions, assignments around learning activities, portfolio creation, and platform navigation. Participants demonstrate their knowledge, skill, and competency through the submission of a structured portfolio to pass each unit within a course. Participants will also have access to collaboration tools on the Bloomboard platform, which they can use to engage with cohort peers, as well as expert facilitators to work through unit assessments within each course. If the participant requires additional work to meet the requirement for a unit, the university professor will provide feedback and encourage the participant to resubmit a revised portfolio to pass that assessment. Additional pathways. Currently, OCPS has several.
Additional pathways.
Clicking and reading. Currently, OCPS has several initiatives that provide additional pathways and support aspiring teachers. Partnering with Kelly Educational Staffing for daily, weekly, and long-term substitutes provides our team with the opportunity to build relationships, to showcase all school locations, culture, and community with future instructional candidates. Kelly Education Substitutes are transitioning into the state awaiting DOE paperwork, could be career changers, education majors, pre- and post-internship, parents, and community members with interest in teaching. Kelly Educational Staffing provides mentors for new substitutes, as well as supplemental support and opportunities to take instructional strategies, classroom management, and ESE training modules, to name a few. During the 22-23 school year, 157 candidates were identified as recruited into full-time OCPS teaching positions. Beginning this fall, Kelly Education will provide 5 $5,000 scholarships to current OCPS paraprofessionals who are in one of our Pathways programs. The Florida Military and First Responder Pathways provides an opportunity for veterans to obtain a 5-year temporary teaching certificate for qualified candidates who have not yet earned their bachelor's degree. Candidates must have a minimum of 48 months of military service with an honorable discharge, have a minimum of 60 credit hours with 2.5 GPA. They must pass a Florida subject area exam and be an employee of a school district or charter district. Veterans who successfully obtain their teaching certificate will be assigned a mentor teacher for a minimum of 2 years to support their classroom teaching. We currently have 3 veterans hired successfully through this pathway. The Accelerated Teacher Pipeline Grant with Westgate provides a pipeline to teaching and supports city year cadets who are interested in becoming a teacher upon completion of their 2-year service. This grant includes reimbursement for the Florida Department of Ed's certification application, all costs for initial exams, and tuition for the PLCP alternative certification pathway.
OCPS is excited about the pending partnership with Valencia College. They will be presenting their application for an elementary education degree to the State Board of Education tomorrow. Valencia's proposed Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education will offer an accessible degree, a degree pathway to support the critical need for teachers in Central Florida. Valencia will offer flexible course-taking options that will enable students to move from an associate's degree to a bachelor's degree holder and fully certified teacher in just under 2 years. In conjunction with local districts and through potential apprenticeship opportunities, Valencia may award credit for competency-based demonstration of the Florida educators' accomplished practices. Our goal is to leverage our strong dual enrollment partnership and market this opportunity to our juniors and seniors at all of our high schools. OCPS currently partners with Educational Partners International, EPI, and the Teacher Placement Group, TPG, to recruit highly qualified international teacher candidates. These teacher candidates are provided with J-1 visas from our partners and can work for 3 to 5 years with OCPS. To date, we have hired 361 international teachers from EPI and another 43 from TPG. OCPS also partners with Maximum Staffing for long-term contracted services for ESC instructional and classified vacancies. This year, we were able to secure 39 certified teachers and 149 ESC classified positions for long-term placement in our fragile ESC vacant positions. And now I'll turn this presentation back to Dr. Vasquez for comments and board discussion.
Thank you to you and your team, who, Bonnie, I think for a while you've been a team of 1 or 2 trying to assist us, and I am pleased that we are able to expand on the pathways to help us with recruitment. At this time, we are ready to take questions from board members.
Thank you. We're going to start with Member Gould.
Thank you for this presentation. I'm excited about the progress that has really been made and the reach for transitioning folks. I know you went over this a little bit, but my first question is about the substitutes. And if people are transitioning from one profession and wanting to sub and maybe become teachers, what kind of training is offered and what kind of guidance is offered by us or Kelly to say you can do this in 3 courses and have comfort in the classroom or whatever?
So we have a couple of different levels there. So interns or traditional ed majors will use Kelly Education as a way to get experience, and they work with their mentors. Kelly Staffing Education has their own classroom management. They have mentors that were retired principals that work with new Kelly Education hires. We also have a catch there where you have teachers that are coming in from another state and are held up in the process of their certification and getting everything transferred in. And then you could also have a parent, community member, or somebody that's thinking about education as a career change, and or a lot of like retired military and things like that, people that want to give back and substitute. And so we presented a couple of years ago on their support program that they have, but they have a plethora of classes for them to take virtually, and they will assist with them in person if needed. And they have a certain number of checks throughout, I would say, like a semester or a quarter with each substitute.
So how is that marketed? Because I think there's a lot of people opting for an earlier retirement, but don't necessarily want to, go into just playing golf every day,
Yeah.
which is not very popular anymore, quite frankly.
So the recruiting team
yeah.
markets at all of our events. We definitely do. And we do have them on the website as well. And we work with them as a partner. They will do pop-up events. They are actually at job fairs locally as well.
These aren't people who are going to go to job fairs. So I would recommend that we look at some of, especially our major technology employers. A lot of, it sounds like that military who do get out earlier and want to do something else that may become full-time teachers, but even if they stayed sub, they're at a higher level.
Okay.
They need to know how easy it is to do it and to get the skills they need to get into the classroom, because that's the fear in the people that I talk to. Like, I don't think I can handle a class, and I don't know how to do curriculum. I know how to project manage. I'm like, if you know how to project manage, you can put together a curriculum.
Okay.
So I think we have to market that a little bit more with that. And then we have a lot of people moving here from other states, taking up permanent residency again, retiring in that 55 to 65 range, that want something to do but maybe not be tied up all the time.
Okay.
But may do it for semesters and such. Okay. And then I know this is highly competitive across the country, and I'm wondering if we have ever looked into trying to supply some kind of intern housing so that we could bring people here from other colleges in order to do their internships and their apprenticeships here.
Disney comes to mind. I don't think they're using all their student housing now. That may be a conversation to have with them if, some of our students might be able to stay there on a short-term basis, even if we have to pay for it. But it's so market-specific now, and we just don't have enough pipeline in the region to do that if we don't figure out ways where we can house interns and apprenticeships.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gould. I'm cued in next, and thank you for this presentation and all your hard work on this. It's very, very exciting to see, for sure. There's so many great things in that presentation. Can you kind of explain a little bit more about the new apprenticeships and how those will work a little bit more? I'm kind of still unclear, and I've had people ask me about it, so I just want to make sure I'm giving correct information.
So I have the requirements of apprenticeships. They haven't started the programs yet. The colleges are building them currently. So to be able to enter into apprenticeship, I can give you those requirements. But my understanding is that it is more of a micro-credentialing where you spend more time on the job training in the classroom. In the apprenticeships, they would work with what they call a journey worker, which is a master teacher. And they would do their competencies and all of their tasks in that position. They would be paid employee, and they would have to be in a paraprofessional or program assistant. I really believe that it's held to paraprofessional. But again, they're working all of that out. And they would also need to be a 12-month employee. So there's quite a bit there. It changes often, and for the better. One of the things recently was they did release, they don't have to have the subject area exam to be accepted into the apprenticeship. They do have to do all of the prerequisites to get into a college of education, anything that anyone else, would have to do to get into that apprenticeship.
So, just to clarify, are we thinking this would be like something we offer college students that are graduating with their AA degree?
They have to have their AA.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and then we could say, you can come here and be an apprentice teacher, work under a master teacher. They would be paid as a teacher, or they'd be paid as a
Paraprofessional.
paraprofessional while they're getting.
With a progression to a percentage of the teacher's salary by the second year, the end of the second year. There's a salary progression written into the statute. It's all in statute.
That's really interesting and really exciting. Now,
It is.
Has there been any talk about compensation for the master teacher at all, or any stipend pay or anything like that?
There was a to be determined if there was going to be any grant money or money from the state of Florida for the mentor. It's been talked about. It hasn't been settled.
Okay.
The candidates would have to have an AA with a 3.0 grade point average. They would have to have 3 educational prerequisites taken and passed before, had to have the subject area, but that was just recently released. A college application in and acceptance into an RTI, which is a college, 12 months educational paraprofessional position with pay advancement required within the second year. They are not allowed to submit a FAFSA application or any kind of cost reduction for tuition. So all of that is being worked out. And they would have to be in a qualified mentor's classroom, which right now is listed as 7 years teaching experience in Florida.
Okay, that's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I just wanted to kind of touch on was, I thought the whole thing around substitutes was very interesting. And I love the idea of really heavily recruiting there. And I think that there's opportunity to also just heavily recruit for substitutes in general. I think that a lot of people don't think about what a great opportunity it is.
I can hear what's happening. The video services team is also in. David is also
Video services, we can hear you
inside
in the
of
boardroom.
WebEx right now also. But I'm not seeing board member Gallo and.
I just texted her.
Okay.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So, I've seen a lot of teachers, and you even spoke of it, we've had teachers recruited from substitute, but I know that, like, for my best friend, actually, she started as a substitute because she had small children in school and it worked good, and then she was a Teacher of the Year finalist last year. So I think it's such a great opportunity to really heavily recruit there, and I really would like for us to make sure we're sharing that with our students, our high school students, and make sure that principals are encouraging them to, once you get that AA degree, you come back and you substitute for me, I'll be waiting for you, like really push them, because I think once people get into that everyday routine of being in front of a classroom and it's less scary than they think it's going to be, that some of them really fall in love with it. So I love that. Thank you again for all of your hard work. Member Ferrant is next.
Thank you. And again, great presentation. Love that we are thinking outside the box and trying to go everywhere. It feels like we're turning over every rock and looking everywhere where we can to find quality teachers. I've been in many of the schools in District 3 that have the teachers that are coming from overseas, and they are fantastic, phenomenal. I love the cultural experience as well that the students receive from having a teacher from another country, and but they are top notch, doing a great job. The one question I had was actually, I had some principal, it was like administrators at a school that were concerned with the senior internship. The issue that they had, and I hope I explained this well, but they had an intern that came in. She was your typical intern, was partnered with another teacher. Fantastic. Like they said, by the end, that girl could have been pulled right out and put right in as a teacher. She was phenomenal. And for whatever reason, she did not pass that test. And I can't think of what that, I don't know the name of it, if it's this SAE, this one. And so she was waiting to retake it, and I'm sure she would do great when she did it the second time. And so for that reason, then something happened, then she wouldn't be able to be paid. I don't remember what it was. She wouldn't be able to be paid as so they were asked to bring in another girl who had passed that test but had not had the experience that the first girl had. And so they had to bring her in. But when and this is my question, when they're a senior intern and we're paying them as if they were a teacher, do they have that partner teacher in the classroom with them the full time, or are they just like kind of thrown in as if they're a teacher and they have someone that can come in and kind of guide them every once in a while? How does that work?
So this pathway is in Florida statute, and they do have to have the subject area exam passed. That is one of the requirements, along with an endorsement from the college. They have to have all of their coursework completed, and an application in. They've done everything except for the internship. So when we hire them in, we are hiring them as a full-time teacher.
So they will not be paired up with?
They will have their college mentor, and they will have a mentor on staff, but not in the classroom with them.
So that was the concern from this particular school. And they said for them, they felt frustrated because the girl that they were told they had to hire, they felt she did not have that experience that was necessary with the being paired up with a teacher. When you come in and you get that experience and you have that one-on-one, like you're in the room with the teacher and you're now acting as the teacher, but the regular teacher is in the classroom with you, and they're watching and they're observing and they're giving you tips and they're saying, hey, try this, try that. And so they've noticed a huge difference in her classroom versus the student who had that, but then did not pass that test to be able to, I don't really know how all that works. And So their concern was that we would just start bringing these students in, the interns in, and without that one-on-one.
Yeah, I think that's good to know, because we're going to be holding a debrief at the end of this semester, because it's a small pilot of only 10 right now. I think that'll be helpful when the principal meets with us, because we're going to invite all the principals in, along with the university staff, to kind of debrief and talk about that. So if you want to send me an email of who the principal was, I'd love to make sure that they're invited, because those are the things that we need to talk through and work through, because we want to make sure we expand this and not have the opportunities, but we want to make sure that the right students in the classroom in the right place.
Yes, yes. And if there is a way, and I don't know how that works. I don't know how long you have to wait, like if you don't pass the test, how long you have to wait to take it again. I know for nursing school, you had to wait a certain amount of months or whatnot. But if there was a way for that, the one that they were, waiting on, if they were able to pass that and then get in, maybe even if it's a quarter late or something like that, something that we could look at.
Yeah, we'll
But-
check on that, sure.
Perfect. But
Thank you.
other than that, I'm super excited. I really love the paraprofessional to teacher, as well as working with OSPA and different areas, and just trying to see who can we get. I have tons of friends, as you were saying, tons of friends, all these moms that they see the need and they've come in. I probably have a dozen who have jumped in, and they're just helping out in any way they can as substitutes, and I think that's phenomenal. So
Good.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Salamanca.
Yes, thank you. I love everything we're doing here. I agree. We're being incredibly creative. We're tackling it from all angles. So props to staff and the superintendent for really just trying everything we can here. One question I had was, what are we doing internally to track kind of effectiveness of the different pathways, right? It's been my experience from reading some research, talking to other districts, that if you're kind of investing in folks that already know the realities of the classroom, call it a paraprofessional, or teachers and international teachers who kind of already know what this is, they have a higher probability of sticking to it, which obviously is really important for us, versus sometimes if this is the first time or you're preparing for it, teaching is incredibly hard. Classrooms are really hard. So we do see that drop off and that first or second year of teaching, right? So obviously for our district, I would love for us to track and prioritize those pathways where we do see the effective outcomes.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and something that I think is built into the applications, at least with Valencia. The Rollins College partnership that we have in UCF are relatively new. Those would be easy for us to track, to see how long they stay with us. They stay at the school. And then with our new partnerships, that can be something that we can even include surveys after their first year that would help us with how the support that they received and additional information that they would have benefited from. So I think we're all excited and want to do everything we can to ensure that it's successful, and being able to track and gather data so that we're on the right path or making the adjustments is critical to the success of the pathways.
Makes sense, yeah. So yeah, that would be my only question or recommendation, is that we start, I think it's great for us to start broad, breadth and depth on all the creative solutions, and then eventually have some timeline for us to analyze what's working, what's not, so we can move resources that way. Obviously, we have limited staff and resources to track and partner with all of these great opportunities. So thank you, though, for today's walk through all this. Is really helpful.
Thank you, Member Salamanca. Member Felder.
Thank you, Chair. I, too, would like to applaud you all on your efforts and what you're doing. I find myself now, even if I'm in a 7-Eleven or wherever I am, and I talk to people, and they'll say, well, I want to be a teacher. And I immediately tell them about the program. I say, you're already in the school system. Some of them will say, yes, I work as a paraprofessional, or no, I want to start getting in. And I try to explain. I said, well, this is a way you can get in, and then they can help you if you really do want to become a teacher. And I'm so glad that Board Member Solomonica mentioned the fact that we do have a tracking system, because I would like to know how many of them stay, after we've done all of that. How many of them stayed? I think I wish this was a program that had occurred years ago when I started teaching, or, around that time, because I think it may have, I don't know, but it may have solved some of our problems that we're having about teacher shortage. But the fact that we are partnering with major universities, Rollins and University of Central Florida, I had my beginnings in University of Central Florida as a recruiter, and then at Rollins I taught Upward Bound. So, this is a wonderful endeavor, and I'm so happy that we are doing this. And I pray that it continues to grow and you have success, that we don't stop this. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Member Felder. And that is our last board member. So I think we're ready to move on. Thank you all so much. Your team did an incredible job, and we really do appreciate all the effort towards this. Thank you. We're going to transition over to the next team. I'm going to hand it back over to Dr. Vasquez to introduce them.
So we have two policies that we are bringing to you for revisions. The first policy, JICK threats, is a direct result of changes that need to be made based on legislation, which we have very little flexibility in making changes. And the second policy deals with grading, which came about as a result of conversations board members had with me and at the dais, parents' concerns that assignments sometimes were not being graded in a timely manner. And so we have drafted language in the policy that hopefully meets that need. All right, and then I'm going to turn it over to, we have Attorney Haynes. Will you be starting? And then you'll introduce the two members with you. I think, is this your first presentation?
Is this on? Yes,
Yes.
it is.
Okay, you're going to be great.
Thank you.
We'll be kind.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Alkivia Haynes. I'm an attorney in the Office of Legal Services, and I have
Sorry, Randy Drickey with District Police.
And Mary Bridges with the Student Services Department.
and we will be presenting on policy JICK. The agenda, as you see, we'll have a tentative schedule, summary of actions, proposed revisions, next steps, and then questions and discussions. Our tentative schedule, we had cabinet on March 11, 2024. We're here today for work section, March 26, 2024. We have a rule development workshop scheduled for May 9th, 2024. And we're hoping to have board approval on May 28th, 2024, and an effective date following board approval. And again, we're here for policy GICK threats and IKA grading systems. And we'll start with policy GICK threats. The purpose is proposed revisions to the policy JICK include language to comply with the new threat management module as set forth in Rule 68-1.0019 Florida Administrative Code. This rule sets forth the process by which school districts, K-12 schools, charter schools, governing boards, and charter schools identify, access, and manage and monitor potential and real threats to school safety and/or student safety. Additional proposed revisions to existing policy language include content formatting and authority citations. And before we begin, I just want to point out that any definitions that you see denoted with a plus sign are adopted as provided in Florida statutes, the Florida Administrative Code, and the Florida Department of Education, Office of Safe Schools, Florida Harm Prevention and Threat Management Manual. You'll see throughout the first section, which is definitions, that there are going to be whole definition changes, and those new definitions were taken from Rule 6A 1.0019 Florida Administrative Code and or the Florida Harm Prevention and Threat Management Manual, and I believe all of you were provided with a copy of that manual. Additionally, specific authorities, we added the additional Florida statute and the Florida Administrative Code rules to those sections, and throughout the policy, you'll see that threat assessment teams are now threat management teams, so you'll see those changes throughout, and you will also see that before it was the school threat assessment team, that is now changed to the school-based threat management team, abbreviated SBTMT, and the previous district threat assessment team is now the district threat management team, abbreviated DTMT, throughout. Additionally, the Florida Harm Prevention and Threat Management Manual has been replaced with the Florida Harm Prevention and Threat Management Manual replaces the Model Behavior Threat Assessment Policies and Best Practices for K through 12 schools, so you will see those changes throughout. And also the old policy, the old model CSTAG has now been replaced with the Florida model. And before we begin, we would just want to ask, would you like us to read in all the changes, or do you want just a summary of the major changes?
Yeah, I think we'll go with a summary. It's fine with us. Thank you.
Thank you. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Chief Durkee.
All right. So we have a couple of different things. One of the primary things on page number 1 under section 1A is the changing from aberrant to concerning behavior. In the new Florida model, the new definition of concerning behavior replaces that of aberrant behavior. So it talks about in detail what that type of behavior would be classified as. So what type of things are you looking for the schools to be considering in a concerning behavior model. So in this new model, like I said, concerning behavior is the key thing that they're looking at. Also, with concerning communications, what are the types of communications that the schools should be looking at and be concerned with? What types of things are they communicating, either electronically or verbally, or however they're using to communicate? Sorry, I'm getting away from the microphone. You think being 6'10", I could get closer to it. But it does have the changes in the process as far as what types of things they're looking for specifically in the interactions electronically or verbally in their communication. On page 2, you'll see that they've removed the CSTAG from the new model. CSTAG was replaced in January of this year with the Florida-specific model. As we move through it, specifically in the different sections in E, F, and H, they're differently defining what those things are as far as what a threat assessment is, and F, what the new terminology for a threat management model would be, and what the Florida model refers to. It gives you the specifics as far as the new instrument that the state of Florida has come up with, which is their document for tracking the threat assessment process, or threat management process as it's now called. So they've taken assessment out and they use management pretty specifically. On number H, they talk about imminent threats, and one of the things in this new model is talking specifically about the types of threats that we're dealing with and classification, because they have classified or reclassified all the different threat levels, which we'll talk about on the next page. But it is becoming apparent that the imminency of the threat determines the level of the threat and how the schools should react to it and what types of safeguards they should be putting in place. So on the next page, page 3, you have the different levels of concern. Basically, I've simplified it to 3 levels of concern: low, medium, and high. Lows would be concerns that are not traditionally going to be of a significant risk to the school or the school environment. There are things that you're looking for that have easily resolvable situations where the schools can solve the problems very quickly at the school. It might be something where a student might make a statement, but they retract it or they apologize for it. They didn't have intent to carry out a threat. With a medium level of concern, it elevates it because it isn't easily resolved. It's something that may have an ongoing grievance. They may have a situation where they're not letting go of a situation, but they don't have that imminency of action to act. They're not looking for a way to implement a plan or do some sort of school-based attack or something like that. And then last, obviously, is the high levels of concern, and the high levels of concern are just that. There are things that the students have a specific plan. They have a defined grievance. They have an issue that needs to be immediately resolved. If not, there's an imminent likelihood that something could result from that. Turning to the next page, one of the things that has changed is the terminology, obviously, and a student of concern. So everything kind of revolves around that student of concern. In that process, they have new members who are added to the process, and that would be the chair and the vice chair. And everything that is communicated or everything that is a concern, whether it's either a concern or a threat, must be reported through a specific process. And that process is reported to the chair, or in the absence of the chair, to the vice chair. Once they've come up with a concern and they have a process in place, the next thing is they have to have a student support management plan, which is number T on your sheets. And that plan is an ongoing intervention and monitoring plan that's implemented by the school-based threat management team to address the specific concerns. So they're looking for things that they can put in place to safeguard the students and the school environment. So that is also has a specific monitoring time period determined on the level of threat that the student or the school determines that the student is at that particular point in time.
Madam Chair, if I can clarify too, when it says chair or vice chair, it doesn't mean the chair or the vice chair of the school board. It means chair or vice chair. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, we're actually going to get there's new.
Otherwise, you're going to be very busy.
Yeah. There are new team members as far as how they've identified in the school. We'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation, but thank you for clarifying that. Next, on the next page, we talk about a lot of things that have been taken out because they're addressed in a different way. So we go to number U, which is the communication or behavior, and how they pose a risk or a threat to the school, and how it is retrieved, how they're looking at that information. A lot of places through here you'll see that in this process, they're not necessarily waiting for a threat to occur. They're looking for ways to address it through a concerning behavior. So they're trying to get ahead of a situation turning bad and addressing it through that concerning behavior instead of waiting for there to actually be a threat so that we're behind the case. So a lot of things you'll see will kind of dictate or guide you in that direction. Obviously, we make sure that there is a communication of that risk or danger to the school safety or school staff or students. But obviously a threat is not a communication or behavior that is an obvious joke or unequivocally known by the observer to be innocuous. So if it's not a threat, it can be unfounded through this process. Turn to page 6. We talk about, once again, the unfounded determination. An unfounded determination is just that, it's unfounded, which means it did not occur, or it was misinterpreted, or it was not a situation. If a student or an individual makes a comment, it occurs, so there's a factual basis. For an unfounded, there would not be a factual basis to move forward. So that's just clarification on the fourth category of threats. On page 7, it talks about the different school levels or different team levels. First is the school level. Each school, and this is really nothing new, is required to have a school-based threat management team. Before it was a school threat assessment team. They've just changed the terminology to school-based threat management team. They have changed the roles on that particular team. As Ms. Enville stated earlier, they do have a chair and a vice chair. All the members of that team are appointed by the principal or the head of the school. So that person determines who is on their team. The team is made up of 4 individuals by statute. And those individuals are an administrator who is the chair, a mental health professional, somebody with an instructional certificate, and a law enforcement officer. Those people are required to be a part of that threat management process team. In addition to that, they've added one other component, and that other component is they require that if one of those 4 team members do not have individual knowledge of that student, the baseline for that student's behavior, then they have to have somebody from the instructional background who can relay information to that school-based threat management team, individual or specific information about that student's background or current status, if you will. So that way they know if there's something going on in this child's life or there's something going on that needs to be addressed that may be causing this concerning behavior or causing the student to make threats. That person, if they're added, or when they're added, I should say, because they are required statutorily to be a part of the team, they don't have to be trained. They are a contributor, so they don't make the final decision. That's still made by the core group of the chair and other members of the team we discussed earlier. Yes.
Sorry, I just want to chime in. It requires that the chair and the vice chair be an administrator, but we just want to point out that the administrator is defined in Florida statute, so that would not be a dean. So as defined in the Florida statute, it would either be, most likely be an assistant principal and not a dean.
Yes. On the district level, they're required to have a district threat management team, and that district threat management team is appointed by the superintendent or their designee to oversee what the school-based threat management team is doing as far as reviewing high levels of concern or medium levels of concern that are brought forth by that team. Additionally, there's another component that the state has added, and that's a district threat management coordinator, which is also appointed by the superintendent. The district threat management coordinator is a liaison between the school district and the Office of Safe Schools, Department of Education. They're also the person who's responsible for ensuring the fidelity of the threat management process within the district, and they're required to ensure that all training is completed within the district to ensure that all people are properly trained within the prescribed time period set forth in the Florida model. They define specifically the individuals who are part of the process. Instructional team members must actually hold a instructional certificate, current one. School administrator must be on the team. That's really nothing new. The law enforcement officer is also, once again, not a new person. It does require that, if nobody on that team has that individual knowledge, they have that person provided and they're a part of that process so they can contribute. Training is required by anybody who's a member of the school-based threat management team or the district threat management team. They are required to attend training in the Florida model, and they have to do so within the appointed time periods. Anybody who's newly appointed, must be trained within that time or within a time period too, inconsistent with the Florida model. So procedures for threat assessment teams. Basically, in the process, the chair is the recipient of all information, so all threats and concerning behaviors are to be reported to the chair. That's a little bit of a change before. Before it was just to school administration and law enforcement. Now it must come to the chair, and the chair is a person who triages that information when it comes in and determines whether it's something that can be summarily closed or if it's something that needs to go to the full team to be evaluated and assessed and determined. There's also a level of review built in to the new process. That review is by the principal, which is why the principal is no longer part of that school-based threat management team, is they have now included that principal as a reviewer of the information or in the content of what that school-based threat management team is reviewing. So there's that level of review. And additionally, everything that the school-based threat management team does is reviewed by the principal and is also reviewed by the district threat management coordinator. Additionally from that, anything that is determined as a medium or a high level of concern, if it's a medium level of concern, it may go to the district threat management team to review. If it's a high level of concern, it must go to the full district threat management team for review. So that's a little bit of a change from what we had previously, but it does put some layers of review into that process. The next couple things are really just changes in the verbiage from changing it from threat assessment to threat management. So on the next couple pages, you'll see a lot of red lines in that. That's basically just cleaning up some of the language from the old language to the new language, but it doesn't really change fundamentally what we're doing. Obviously, on page number 11, it goes into that fact of all threats or harms must be reported to the school-based threat management team chair or the district threat management coordinator. They're responsible for the intake of all that information and that triaging. There's also some new metrics that have to be accounted for in the new Florida model. So there's different things that we have to account for in that processing, in that review of the threat management process. The next couple of pages, once again, are just, you'll see changes from the district threat assessment team to district threat management and the different titles. There's really no fundamental changes in the processes. As we move into self-harm on page 13, I'll turn it over to.
Talk about that. Thank you. Hi again. I'm Mary Bridges, and I'm on the Student Services team. For this part of the policy with the threat of self-harm, there really is not many changes in the policy at all. The state did separate self-harm from your threat to others. It used to be you'd have to have that threat assessment team meeting once a month and talk about the self-harm and, have them together, and we've separated a little bit. So we've separated the procedure book. So now the procedure book that was mentioned for threat to others is that state book. And then we kept what we had in our old procedure guide that was just threat to self or threat for self-harm. We just have that, and it's a guide by itself. So we really haven't changed our flow chart or changed how we do self-harm, but it's just been separated a little bit from the threat to others.
So that's the end of your presentation?
That's the end of the JIK, yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're going to stop there.
Before you
go ahead.
continue, I just wanted to point out that on page 1, there is a footnote at the bottom that says Florida and state statutes, Florida Administrative Code rules, and Florida model are referenced throughout this policy. It is important to note that these authorities are subject to amendment, which may affect specific sections of the policy. Should a section be impacted by an amendment, this policy shall be deemed to be updated to reflect the amendment as adopted. And it goes on to say that we will do a new red line version. I just want you to know that we included that because there has been some new legislation that was recently passed. It's waiting for the governor's signature, so we are expecting additional changes that we will have to make to policy JICK.
Yes. Not surprising, but great idea to add that verbiage. That was very smart. And you did a great job, Ms. Haynes. Congratulations on your first presentation. I am actually cued in first, so we're going to stop here so we can take a break and do any questions. Thank you for clarifying about the admin. I know that our union had some concerns about that being a dean, so I appreciate you clarifying that. Can you give a little clarity around the mental health designee and who that will be?
Sure. So again, there really isn't a change in that from the old model to the new model. What the state stated is that there had to be somebody on the team who has counseling expertise, and the state determines who has counseling expertise by saying that it's a certified school counselor, a certified school psychologist, a certified school social worker, or a licensed clinical social worker, or a licensed mental health counselor. So those, they clearly state that in the statute. So in our schools, in our middle and high schools, we have the school-based social worker, which thanks to you all, we will still have a full-time school-based social worker in our middle and high schools. So that's that person who is, we instruct that person to be on the threat management team, the school threat management team. When it gets to elementary school, which I think is what the union was questioning about the counselors, the only person with that expertise that's full-time at elementary school is that elementary school counselor. So that elementary school counselor is the person who is on the threat management team. They, stated who monitors the workload for school counselors, and really, for school counselors, we have roles and responsibilities that we provide to schools. My department does, and my department trains the counselors. But that principle, again, schools are so different. At some elementary schools, counselors do 504s,
but there may only be 3 or 4 504s in that school, and at another school, if there's, a larger number, then they might have their MTSS coach who does that. So there is a difference from school to school, but we do try to give guidelines for what those roles and responsibilities are, and if a school is having an issue with, not knowing how to differentiate or split up any of those roles, then we do assist them. The other question, they said, do school counselors provide mental health services since they are not mental health counselors? And I just wanted to clarify that a certified school counselor has been trained in counseling students and expected to, just like all those other school psychologists, school social workers. Now, we don't tend to have our school counselors necessarily doing tier 3 therapy that much in schools, mostly because of those roles and responsibilities. They just don't have that time to do some of that intense therapy, but they are trained to do that. So the school counselors are trained to do all types of counseling.
Thank you. I really appreciate that clarification. My question is, you mentioned, that there's some layers to ensure fidelity. My concern with this and, other things that we've had to do, like Title IX investigations, that when things become laborious for our schools that are already overwhelmed, that at times concerns may not be investigated fully the way that they should be necessarily. And I'm not placing blame, because it's just there is so much on our schools. So in what ways are we ensuring that we are going through this process with every threat that comes in, or every, like with Title IX, every complaint that comes in, that everything is being done the way it's supposed to, because I know that it's really hard on our schools.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time educating the schools on what those processes are, so they have a good understanding of the consequences of not having fidelity in the system. Obviously, we want them to report information. We want it to be done in a timely manner. One of the things is the timelines. It is a little bit laborious. I'm not going to say it's something that gave me a little bit of a first time I heard it. We're about almost 4 months into this now with this new process we started in January, and we've had pretty good responses from the schools. We've had pretty good understanding of the process, of the flow of how it should be occurring. I don't really see as far as being an issue of them not reporting stuff. It's just understanding the new process, because we've done something one way for so long, and now we're switching gears in the middle of a school year, which was a little bit of a challenge, I'm not going to lie. But they've adopted pretty well to it. We work with them as much as we can to try and get them the understanding of the process, of the new forms, of the new documentation, of the new reporting and review processes. It's a learning environment for us, and we're helping them through the system. So,
thank you. Appreciate that. Member Salamanca.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, a couple of questions. One, thank you for all of this. Laborious ones, they'll be at the schools, laborious and implementing, laborious and training. So thank you for kind of making this into a policy, into it, something we can implement. For page 3, on the levels of concern, the low, medium, and high, I appreciate that we're distinguishing at levels. How are we thinking about this, if at all, in relation to our code of conduct and how we define some of the things there? When I read low level of concern, it's pretty broad. I mean, it's a lot of here can be left to interpretation. I'm just wondering how we're thinking about defining and guidance for some of this, or do we have it from the state more flushed out?
Sure. Well, one of the things is in this process, threat management is separate from discipline.
Okay.
So just because something might be a low level of concern from a threat perspective or threat management perspective, it could still be a level 4 in a disciplinary type response. So the two don't necessarily have to correlate. A lot of times they do, but they don't have to necessarily correlate, because there are two independent processes
Yeah, I understand
that they go through. So there may be situations that we've had where it's a low level of concern from the threat management process, but a very significant concern either from a discipline or a law enforcement perspective.
Got it. I can imagine at the school level, these might start getting a bit confusing, or the pathways of addressing both at the same time or simultaneously could be also complicated.
And the terminology comes straight from the statute, so
Yeah.
we didn't have a choice in that, and so we'll make note, because you're right, and we are making changes to our code of conduct, and in some cases, we may be able to adapt some of the language, but again, the more severe consequences, which are typically aligned with discipline and threats, our hands are tied with the verbiage because that's also required by the state, and they
Right.
didn't necessarily collaborate when putting this together. But we'll make note of that and pay special attention at the discipline training.
Yeah, and I just imagine just the communication between discipline and threat management teams alone, as some of this stuff happens. They're not all the same, but they'll overlap and whatnot. So I think the implementation itself is just it feels tricky to me as I read through this and as I think about how it happens in the classroom and beyond. So that's one thing so I get that they gave us these larger definitions, but I imagine we might have questions on what it means.
Well, we could, but remember, threats to school, they might deem is low
Right,
because the child doesn't have to meet, but that is a zero tolerance offense.
right.
So we don't have leeway in
On
the
the-
consequences for that.
Yeah, and then also just, I don't know what our plan is on communicating to parents, the difference, and like you said, I can imagine being a parent that says something in a document says low level of concern, and my kid also got a level 4, so how is that the same? And so, I think communication will be key here, just because they gave us the language, and so if I'm a parent and I get my kid had some low level of concern, but my kid is out of school for 10 days, I'm gonna be like, I don't understand, so, just flagging that. Okay. Hold on, let's see, I had one more question.
If I could, I just want to point out that the threat management assessment that the schools do, that is now considered an education record. So the parent does have access to that, and it'll be redacted to exclude any other students that were involved, but they do have access and they can request to
Right.
read that threat assessment.
So yeah, so maybe just providing some guidance and understanding for parents so that they can understand the difference between the two different pathways of discipline versus threat management is interesting. On page 8 for the training itself, it just says that, within the time frame set forth by the department. What are those timelines on training? I know we talked about it previously, but just to clarify.
There were a couple different things. Initially, when it launched,
Right.
the state of Florida required that everybody who'd been named to a school-based threat management team or district threat management team be trained before January 1st.
Right.
So we were
And I
able to
remember
accomplish
we
that,
were,
right?
yes.
Moving forward, anybody who's added to a team must be trained within 60 days of that appointment. So anytime they're appointed to a team, they must be trained within 60 days, which is really not a lot different. CSTAG had similar requirements. Theirs were 90 days,
Right.
but they had similar requirements in CSTAG too.
Okay, that is helpful. Okay, and then right above that in F, where it says, shall assign a member of the school staff who is familiar with the student. Is this any teacher, parent, like how are we thinking about this? Like, what do we constitute familiar with the student in this case?
Okay.
It has to specifically be somebody with an instructional background.
Instructional.
And it has to be, typically it's going to be one of the teachers that student has because they have that individual knowledge or individual understanding of that student's background. That's why they don't require them all to be trained, because obviously we couldn't train all the teachers in the process. So it has to be somebody who's a contributor to give you that baseline for that student, or where that student's, if they're having issues at home, if they're having issues at school, if they're having something that might be a contributing factor to that concerning behavior or that threatening behavior.
Got it. Okay, so yeah, and so I would just flag there that also if I'm a teacher, my level of familiarity with the student versus what someone else believes that familiarity of the student is, it might vary. So some guidance for our staff and teachers here on, what's expected, what does this mean for the student or for themselves as they work through this, I think that would be helpful because, yeah, I mean, I have schools that are 4,400 students and familiarity with students is not a very objective definition, so I'm curious.
And that was one of the reasons why I think they took it away from the school-based threat management team making a decision without having knowledge of that student.
Yeah.
So they wanted to have somebody who had knowledge of that student contributing to that process.
Yeah, it's important, but yeah, I think hard depending on the circumstance. Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you so much.
If I could also add, in addition to that, if there is a student that's deemed new to the school, then the school-based threat management team has an obligation to reach out to the previous school to bring somebody in from the previous school that would have better knowledge of that student.
That's good. Thank you, Member Salamanca. Great questions. Member Ferrant.
I agree. It's extremely overwhelming. It is concerning that we're here at this stage in our society. It makes me sad that, feels like back in the day we had, the threat was so-and-so took my lunch at school and it was more like that, or he told me my hair looked ugly today. And now it has become this huge issue. So to kind of follow up with what Member Salamanca was saying, as far as making sure that there's clarification with parents and everybody's sort of on the same page. If I'm a parent and I come in, my student had done something wrong. So I'm trying to think of how to explain this. But basically, so when we do the threat management team, this is only if a student has threatened to cause harm to another student or cause harm to the school, like that type of thing, or I just want to make sure I'm on the same page.
It could be a concerning behavior. So it could be a behavior that hasn't risen to the level of being a threat, but it might be activities that might be detrimental to the safety of the school or a sign that there's a deterioration in that student's situation, if you will. And so it allows the school to have an ability to put some strategies or some interventions in place before it gets to a level where they're actually making a threat. So it's trying to get ahead of the process. So there might be situations where they haven't actually made a threat yet, but their behavior is something that is of concerning to the school safety or to the belief that that student is on a pathway that might lead somewhere we don't want them going. And so it gives them that ability to do that. One of the things, and this kind of dovetails back, is there is a requirement for communication from the school-based threat management teams, the chair, to the parents about what's going on. It's not where they're operating in a vacuum. They're required to provide any types of intervention plans that are put in place with the parents. So they're required to do that in this new process.
Okay, and so, okay, that makes more sense. So it's not necessarily that the student did something, they're getting a level 3 or 4. It could just be, hey, this is something's concerning. We want to just get this documented. Is that basically the reasoning for this? Is we're getting it documented, making sure that we stay aware and we're on top of it.
Right.
And then the parents are aware that, hey, keep an eye on your kid as well. Like, just know that this is what they've been doing at school. This is concerning. But not necessarily every child who goes through this threat-based assessment is getting some sort of discipline.
Correct. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, that's correct.
That makes sense. Okay. And then the same way then, if they do get, they have done something, but it's a low-level threat, but yet it goes against the code of conduct, I think then that is very confusing, and it's a lot of, my goodness gracious. I feel like this is honestly one of the big things that I hear when I'm at school visits. It's just so overwhelming. It is a lot, and you have to get it done quickly, and there's so many students. And if you had, I mean, I can't even imagine if you had 5 or 6 students do anything that was concerning, in 1 week, and then you're having to do all of this for everyone. So kudos to every person who has to do this. I think it's a lot. I understand the reasoning behind it. Obviously, we want to keep our kids safe, but I think it's also another reminder for parents that, you know, we have to be on top of our kids and really like parenting our children and not just letting them, I don't know, be on social media and video games all day because it's easy, but really parenting them and you know, helping them to become helpful members of society. Otherwise it's a burden on the schools. It's a burden on everyone around if we're not focusing on that. But I appreciate that. I think that was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Farrant. That's it for us, so we can move on to the next policy.
Right, so our final policy this afternoon is a little less meaty than JICK. And as I mentioned earlier, the changes are primarily a result of conversations we have had. The board has received numerous concerns from parents regarding the timely submittal of grades for assignments, and so our team, under the direction of Mary Bridges, who wears multiple hats, has put together language to be able to address that concern. So Mary, you're on.
Thank you. So this is policy IKA, grading systems. Proposed revisions to policy IKA include the addition of a section titled Grade Entry to ensure that students and parents or legal guardians are timely informed of academic progress. Additional proposed revisions to existing policy language include content, terminology, formatting, and authority citations. So as we go to the red line, you'll see the first section was separation of academic grades from conduct grade. We didn't change anything there except changing the terminology to specific authority. The second was the grade reduction as punishment. Again, there was no changes in that section except the just some formatting. For the third section, the old title was High School Grading System, and we just wanted to update that because that's really the school grading system for grades 2 through 12, and that's just listing the state grading system of 90 to 100 as an A, 80 to 89 as a B, and so forth. The next section, it was titled Repeated Courses, and we just wanted to update that to the state language. The state talks about when you take a course over, they call it grade forgiveness, so we wanted to just be using the same terminology as the state, but there's really no changes to that section. It just discusses the grade forgiveness policy, which has been in place for quite some time, and there are no changes. The last section is that new section that we added, and that is a section called Grade Entry. And the way we worded it is, and let me read it out of, I can't read off that. Timely grades are an essential way to inform students and parents or legal guardians of academic progress. Students should submit assignments by due dates to allow teachers ample time for grading. A teacher will publish graded assignments turned in on time to the district's online gradebook no later than 2 weeks from each assignment's due date. And that is all. So that's really the one thing that we would need to discuss.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Member Gould.
Why was 2 weeks chosen versus, 3 school days or 5 school days?
So remember, we give, in the middle of the 9 weeks, we publish a progress report.
Mhm.
So 2 weeks is about the middle of that time frame, so teachers would have an opportunity to publish 2 sets of grades. And we also understand that teachers do need time. They do have other responsibilities. And so 2 weeks gave ample time to have grades in before the progress report or the report card being issued. We also included the verbiage there of students turning in assignments on time. I think that is an issue that teachers have been grappling with the idea that they have to, that students can turn in assignments at any given point, that due dates are very fluid, and that is a teacher decision. And so we understand that putting the time constraint is adding a little to some of what the teachers is doing, but then we are also stating that students should be turning in those assignments on time.
So if after the first 9 weeks and we're getting closer to the holiday break, the teacher, because the break would not count, right? Those 2 weeks would not count or would count?
No, the new semester, the new quarter starts after the winter break.
Okay, so say they do end of quarter exams, those grades would need to go in before that report card cycle, or that would go in after that report card cycle, so you might not get that grade, updated grade, until beginning of February?
We have given them up to 2 weeks to turn in, to grade the assignments, as opposed to not giving any.
Right.
I'm going to defer to Mary as far as how many times we're giving end of quarter exams.
Yeah, I mean, I think that teachers tend to, again, we give teachers a lot of autonomy on when they're giving assignments and when they're giving grades. So I believe that most teachers will, if they're giving an assignment towards that end of the 9 weeks, they know in their head that they want to be able to have time to grade that assignment before those grades are turned in. Now, if they don't finish them, they can grade them after that 9 weeks, and then if that grade changed, they would have to do a grade change form and things like that. But I think teachers, again, when they're doing their own grading system and determining what assignments they have, they will normally make sure the last kind of large graded assignment might be, that Monday, and knowing that they could get it in by that Friday. But this was saying that it would not be longer than that 2 weeks. But I think a lot of teachers do, grade papers every couple days and turn those grades in more regularly.
I'm very happy that we have something in writing. I still worry about those kids on the cusp, especially when they're sophomores, juniors, not so much seniors, but that sophomore, and they struggle. And then they don't find out that they've actually dropped a grade, for a semester. And then it's too late to make it up. There's not enough assignment time because you get into the testing cycle.
I believe that many of the concerns that were voiced really had to do with assignments that were done earlier in that grading period, and so that they would not know, let's say, until the progress report, or that the assignments that were happening later on, especially the end of the 9-week exam, those, I think the teachers have readily graded them because they are included as part of the total grade. I think the assignments that require more grading time may be those that are more laborious in nature, like writing assignments, projects. I think the test, although I'm not going to say that every teacher grades the test in a timely manner, but I do think that, from my recollection, especially some of the emails that have come to me, they have been for assignments earlier on that they've been waiting and didn't get a grade.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Gould. I was cued in next, and I do appreciate the this because I've gotten those emails as well. And to be fair, as you said, I don't think that it's a vast majority. But I do think there is an issue with some students not getting grades and for an extended period of time. And that is a problem, especially when we're trying really hard to encourage parents to be involved and encourage our kids to stay on top of assignments. And, it's hard as a parent to be involved when you have nothing to look at for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, or, and you're asking for those grades. So I think there needs to be definitely some limits there. Did we do any research on other districts? Do other districts have this? I tried quickly to look earlier today and I had trouble finding. I saw one district that had like a 1 grade a week requirement has to be submitted. But I didn't see anything with like a time. So I don't know. Did we do any of that research when we?
Yeah, we kind of found the same thing that you found out. A lot of districts say that, teachers need to have a certain amount of assignments per week or a certain amount of assignments before the progress report, but we really didn't see anything that had a specific time limit of when those grades had to be recorded.
Okay. And there is statute or not statute maybe, but maybe it's just the Department of Education that says, it just says timely, right? Mm-hmm. Grades should be submitted timely. There's no actual definition for what timely is, and that's what the issue is, correct?
Correct. And we've looked at 2 weeks. I mean, there was conversations of 1 week, and then weighing, some of the challenges teachers are facing with children turning in assignments late, and sometimes they don't want to grade because once they give that out, maybe students get access to that and it impacts the scores. So we will definitely monitor. We'll see if you're continuing to get emails about that, and it can always be tweaked. I believe that either way, you're looking at a time frame. If you have to have grades once a week or have at least 1 grade per week, then they have a week to grade the assignment. We can, this is a draft, so certainly we're here to listen to the board and make revisions. If you think 2 weeks is too long or not long enough, we're certainly willing to make changes to it.
Thank you. And no, I think if you're looking at a time period, that 2 weeks seems reasonable because it allows time for there to be adjustments before a progress report or a report card necessarily, if they need to. I had another thought, but I lost it. Okay, that's it for me. And there's no other board members that are queued up? Nope. Yes, there is. Member Salamanca.
Sorry, I had to go get some water. I think we got some feedback obviously from teachers on it being too short of a timeline, from parents saying it's too long of a timeline. So I think we're balancing the two here. I think, definitely some of the points that, teachers made on there are some exceptions when it comes to PE or visual performing arts or timeline. So I'm just curious if in the policy there's some room to expand on or highlight if there is particular types of instructional classes or that tend to go over the 2 weeks and we make it more explicit, or if we want to kind of keep it tight like this.
We did not anticipate that. And honestly, we did have, I want to verify before I make this statement, but we did have conversations with Mr. McCracken about the change in the policy. It was verbal. My understanding is that we did not get feedback. He understood that we were looking at the 2 or 3 week timeline. But when you put something in the policy that gives an exception, it's difficult then to narrow it down.
Yeah.
And again, my recollection is that those courses like PE, art, I don't know that we were getting the concerns about the grades for those projects or those assignments from those areas. I know that PE in elementary, is it still like satisfactory?
With the I don't think with elementary with the specials it's not normally, but there are some electives in the higher grades that the teachers may have more students in.
Yeah,
those,
I think it's a function of electives might have more students. I think the example maybe used was PE and visual performing arts, but I'm curious if I agree it gets into the gray area, but I'm wondering maybe electives that are maybe more academically focused, and you have the difference between 20 students, 25 students per class versus 40. That would be maybe where I would see if we can get a little bit more feedback or nuance there, because I think that could be difficult. Maybe those are 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks, but that's kind of from what I've heard the only one that caught my attention as, some of these electives maybe in high school have significantly higher number of students, and I don't want those electives to necessarily maybe have less assignments because of that, and so.
But then you still run into the same problem. So if you're going to give them 3 weeks and progress reports go out you cut it off at 4 weeks. So now if the child didn't do well, there isn't time to recover. We certainly can, look at having more conversations, see if the Classroom Teachers Association wants to sit down and have conversations about it. We can make the changes now and then evaluate, because I think we need to be able to see what type of an impact. Most of the teachers do grade the assignments. Many of them turn them around in less than a week.
Right.
And I think that that will continue. I think that those that maybe are having greater challenges, if we can determine what those challenges are, we may be able to assist if there's something within our control.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm supportive of the 2 weeks. I think I've had a lot of emails in my inbox of that delay in grading and how difficult it is to catch up for students and have a real understanding of where they stand. So I can appreciate that. So I'm supportive of the timeline we have here. I agree that exceptions tend to be get complicated. But I am aware that maybe some of those classes, that those are kind of like the edge cases of probably high school, probably electives, more academic electives with more students than not maybe. So I think we just monitor it, and I would love to get feedback and spend more time with the CTA and understanding.
I think too with those, that would be a chance for a school administration to be working with those teachers to come up with a better system for them. If they do have a lot of students, that they might be able to give some type of feedback, so that they're not waiting 4.5 weeks and there's nothing in their grade book. They could be looking at what the kids are doing and help that teacher on how to give feedback on smaller increments or something like that.
But something for us to talk to our administrators, but also just, I think once we implement, feedback will be welcomed. I think we always want to see how this impacts all of our students and teachers. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Salamanca. Member Felder.
Thank you. I can recall during the time when the 2019, when the pandemic hit, I knew when we went on for spring break, I said, we're not coming back. So how you know? I said, we're not coming back. But the Canvas, that for me, I was ELA, English teacher, that worked so wonderful for me. And I remember Dr. Shanoff, he visited, it was Teacher Appreciation Week during the pandemic, and each of the administrators went to the teacher's home. So he was assigned to my house, and he said to me, Ms. Felder, please do not give the children any more work, because I was sitting there at Canvas, and all I was doing, I was giving assignments. It was easy because I could comment, I could grade, I could do that. But we're not, we're now back in class. We have to walk around, we're talking and everything. And I just had last night a friend of mine complaint about, I said, you're just doing your grade. I say, Grades supposed to be turned in Friday for spring break. Well, the school says, but the district, you have until. I said, so what are you doing? She says, I'm grading. So, I guess it is sort of a problem. And I almost was attempted to help her grade, but I said, no, I'm not going back to that. But I almost did because she had stacks of paper, and I don't know, it appears that we do have some leeway in the policy about whether 2 assignments or 1 for that week. But grading has always been an issue with teachers, well, especially, I should say just ELA, all teachers. And in the classes that have like your PE class, some of your electives that have like 40 and 50 kids in there, sometimes that's a concern. But one of my concerns is about, when you're grading, when you have a student who becomes ill and they have to leave and they're out of school for like weeks at a time, you have to give them the same opportunity, an open window to do the assignment and correct it, and that it needs to be graded. So I'm hoping as we look at the policy that we consider that, because some teachers have students that are in that situation, they're out for 6 weeks, or they're out for, and there's a lot of things going on. So how are you going to work that out to make sure that there's enough time, and we owe it to the student to give them their time to make up. And I know sometimes that's a pain for teachers, but we have to be able to do that. So I'm reading where we are kind of lenient in terms of how they do 1 or 2 assignments. Let me ask you a question, Dr. Vasquez. And I know principals probably hate this, but I'm not saying this to be the only way you have summative evaluation, like satisfactory or unsatisfactory. You need some parents like to see grades, A, B, C, they like to see that, then they would see points. But if we are requiring like 2 grades a week, could 1 be that?
So we're not requiring any number of grades per week.
We're not, okay.
We're not, we didn't go there with the policy. And to comment on your comment, a child that's out 6, 8 weeks, we probably would recommend hospital homebound as an option if needed. But certainly teachers are able to extend the timeline for grades to be turned in. That is something that is done at the school level. But a child that is, let's say they're receiving treatment for cancer and they're out, going to be intermittent in and out, we do have hospital homebound that allows us to continue to provide the instruction and allow for the child to heal and get treatment.
And have the opportunity to make up. I know we did when I was teaching. That provision was made. Sometimes it's frustrating, but you have to allow them the time to do it, get it wrong, and redo it. I mean, you have to do that.
Yes,
Yeah,
if I could just add, in our attendance policy, that provides if students are absent, it states that they would have time to
A day plus a day.
to make up their assignments. So in this policy, we clearly stated this is for students who have turned their assignments in by the due date. So if they turned it in by the due date, then they should expect a grade in within that 2 weeks. If they turn it late for any reason, then it's kind of, the teacher isn't, trying to get those in within the 2 weeks. So we did clarify that in here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Felder. And I queued back in just because I had another question I remembered. But then something Member Felder said made me think that maybe we might want to look at adding a statement like, unless circumstances arise that make this difficult, or unless arrangements are made with principal, or some kind of like exceptional out, mind you, of the 2 weeks, if there's something like what she was saying, where there's a circumstance where. Would that be too difficult if we added?
So the policy
like
states a teacher will publish graded assignments turned in on time. So anything that's not turned in on time, they're not bound to the 2 weeks from the due date.
Oh, they got time.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And now, if you're talking about the student having the time, that is addressed in our attendance policy. And I believe it doesn't have a limit. It just says we'll have time. I believe it may have had like 1 day for every absence, but I think that was removed.
That was removed, I believe.
And so we do, under the attendance policy, address students' absences and being able to have enough time to make up the assignments.
Okay. Okay, and then my other question was something else that CTA had a question about, which was what happens if this is not done? What will be the consequence?
So, we do have site-based decision-making, and so we would instruct our administrators that if there is a teacher that is continuing to not follow the policy, that first they would be counseled. Let's find out, why is this happening? Mary made some suggestions, maybe there's too many assignments and they need to take a look at, well, yes, you can give the assignments. You can have some of the kids grade their own assignments, but the ones that you're going to actually take for a grade that will count towards their final grade, you limit. And then after counseling, if it continues to happen, we could recommend that they meet with them again, maybe be a bit more assertive, and then we would just follow discipline, right? So if that continues to happen, we would refer them to like professional standards. If I'm wrong, General Counsel or Deputy Counsel can interject, but we would look through progressive discipline. We would then look at a directive where it's more formalized, and then if they still continue to do that, it would progress. But I would suspect that teachers that are having difficulty turning in assignments, I think just working with a resource teacher or a colleague that can help them. Many times it's just that they've given too many assignments and they're not able to keep up with it, which is understandable. I mean, I've dreaded giving a writing assignment, and that's really who came to mind with more than 2 weeks, is because a teacher who is doing writing, which then also opens the door for us to possibly take advantage of some of the AI tools that are available for us. Teachers can set a rubric, and the rubric will then assist in the scoring and grading. They do need to spot check, but it's an opportunity for us to also introduce new tools to help our teachers in the area of grading.
Sounds good. Thank you. And that's it for us. And I believe that was our last policy.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just
Yes.
very briefly, I wanted to go over policy JE. The policy does actually state as follows: students shall be given a reasonable amount of time to make up any work assignments which were missed during an absence. At least one school day shall be allowed to make up missed work for each day of absence. So we still do have the at least 1 day for each day of absence within the policy.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Is there anything else that we need to discuss? All right. With that, this meeting is adjourned.